you're live.
Hit it, man.
Okay, so let's just give a run through again from the beginning of the parak. We'll just run through it quickly, what we gained hopefully yesterday. The subject of trying to minimize the aspect of Yom Tov being a little bit like Chol. As much as we can minimize it, we're being asked to do so. But we learn a Kiddush in the middle that never at the expense of Simcha something.
So that's what I found a bit puzzling yesterday when it came to using the pole between the two guys to carry, which was equal to using the pitchfork. It wasn't less.
No, Rashi didn't say that was equal. The equal that Rashi spoke about is carrying it on your shoulder versus holding it in your hand.
Oh, okay. Well,
The pole, two different types of carrying on something on the pole.
So he says that the amount is not, the diminishing of the effort is not the important thing, but
It's not that we have to make it easier. We have to really try to make a shinui. That's the first step.
Right, that was
But that shinui should never be at the expense of what we call Simchas Yom Tov. So it can't be harder than the normal way of doing it.
Right, but why not less?
Not that it can't be less, but it doesn't have to be.
Okay. You would think it would be. If it's to increase the simcha, you would make it
No.
easier.
Not that we're saying you want to increase the simcha. I said there's two considerations which you see in the Gemora. A, we want to make Yom Tov as different from Chol as possible.
Mm-hmm.
So we always strive to make the method that we're using different, but never at the expense of the simcha.
Okay.
Not that we have to increase the simcha.
Ah, really.
That's a different idea.
Doesn't it say Arbe Simcha to increase the Simcha?
Excuse me?
Doesn't Rashi use the word Arbe Simcha to increase the Simcha?
I'm not sure. It's possible, but again, even if something does accomplish that, it doesn't mean that we have to always have that. It just, again,
I was just nitpicking. I just found it a bit odd yesterday when we spoke about it.
I think what we were seeing yesterday, but again, I would like to go through it again today, so is that we have a priority to make Yom Tov different than the Chol. Right? That's increasing our appreciation of Yom Tov, our sanctity of Yom Tov, whatever you want to call it. So Chazal made that a priority. We have to try to do that as much as possible.
Right.
However, it can never interfere with my simcha.
Right.
That is like a side project, and the main thing is still simcha. But I don't have to do something that's going to increase the simcha. What I have to make sure is not to do something that's going to decrease the simcha. That's what I would understand the Gemora plus the Rashis. But let's go over it again. Let's see if it makes sense the second time around.
Seems to be a sort of inverse ratio type thing. The more this increases, the more that decreases. But,
We hope that it goes together, but it doesn't have to. That's what Rashi's stressing. But in most of the cases, we were able to find a way that's different and it less tircha, i.e. it increases our simcha. So that was a nice coincidence. But Rashi says from the very final case, we don't always need to have that. The main thing is just don't decrease the simcha. So it seems like the big priority is changing things from the way that we normally do them. Making sure that Yom Tov is deemed a special day. A special day meaning we do things differently. But if in order to communicate that idea, or in order to ingrain that idea, we need to do something that's more difficult, then we're not going to do it. Okay?
Yeah.
So let's try to go through the Mishnah again and the Gemora again.
Movavi letter. We start in the beginning.
I think we should start at the beginning if it's possible. Maybe yayin. Maybe kara yayin.
Maybe kara yayin come. So you carry wine in a jar from place to place.
Jugs.
Or jugs. What did I say?
Jar.
Oh, jugs. No, you have ham, a soul, by kupa, don't carry them in a basket or a box. Aval maybe who are cut for or cut up for. Bring them on your shoulder, on his shoulder.
Right.
All of them, all before him.
Okay, let's see the Rashi. Hamemi makom lo makom.
Maybe makom lo makom. Besoy chatchum. One who brings from one, pictures of one from one place to another place. So within the boundary, boy, Ayudei Erev was through by means of an Erev. He's going either through the tchum of the area or by means of an Erev.
So what's Rashi saying?
That you have to carry only within the Erev itself.
Meaning, that's not part of the subject of this Mishnah. It's already in a case like that. It's biz so tchum or al yidei erev. That's the background information we need to know. And how can we even start to talk about if there's no erev? How can we start to talk about if you're going from? Often one place to another means places that are far away. Right? I'll tell you another place where it says. The word makom, and it means a place that's far away. There's a Mishnah in Psachim called Makom Shenagu. It means the fifth parak, if I'm not mistaken, maybe the fourth parak. And it talks there about a subject which is pretty important, that if you go from one place to another place, you're going to have to respect the minhagim of both the place you left and the place you're coming to. You okay?
Yeah.
The halachas of minhag, right? When you keep a minhag and you go to a new place that they don't do that minhag, what are you supposed to do?
Follow the Romans, do like the Romans, right?
No, not necessarily. The Gemora says you have to keep up your old minhagim. You can't just change your minhagim because you're in a new place. But you have to also respect the minhagim of the new place.
Do it quietly.
You have to do it quietly and so on and so forth. What I'm trying to show you is that there, when it says a person's in a new makom, it means a new city. But that cannot be what it means in this Mishnah, says Rashi. Don't interpret this like normally we say going from makom to makom means like going from Telstone to Romema. Okay?
So it's in the Romema two different...
Makomos, two different places where it could have two different minhags or whatever. But it turns out here that can't be what it means. Why? As Rashi says here, we have to be talking about betoch the tchum. Or betoch the erev. Okay? So, in a tchum, you know how far you're allowed to go from a place on Shabbos or on Yom Tov?
2,000 amos.
2,000 amos in any particular direction. But if I would be going to a new city, if that's what mimakom l'makom means, I'm going farther than that. So that would be a problem. It's not allowed. So Rashi defines it. What does it mean, makom l'makom here? Not the regular makom l'makom, which means going beyond the tchum. Here, makom l'makom means
Within the tchum itself.
within the tchum. So you could still call it mimakom l'makom. It's not the regular, like the parak in Psachim that talks about the minhag of the makom. That means the minhag of a whole new city or sometimes a whole new country, right? In America they do things one way, in Israel they do things a different way. You have to know how to act. That's what that Mishnah is telling. But that's true. That could also be called makom. A new minhag of a new makom. An entirely different city, or entirely different state sometimes, or entirely different country. But in this case, it can't mean that. Because in this case, to go from one city to another, to carry wine from one city to another, you're not even allowed. Because that means you're leaving the Tchum, usually. Rashi says no. Don't think of our Mishnah in terms of that. Because we're taking that out of the computation. We're taking that out of the picture. You're within the tikkun. We're not talking about going outside the tikkun. You're within an eruv. We're not talking about leaving the eruv. But once you're in an eruv or you're in a city, you still can go from mimakom to makom. There's a different kind of makom mimakom now, from one street to another street, or from one shul to another shul.
Let's wash my face also.
Please.
So good.
Okay. Should we see the next Rashi? Lo yiviein b'sala b'kupa. Don't bring them.
In his hands or in a...
No, in a basket or in a box.
So you can sort of a box. לתת שלוש וערב בתוך הקופה. To bring 3 or 4 in a box. ויסתם משום מראה כמעש דרכו.
Are you having trouble with some of these words?
I'm actually very tired today. I had a very difficult day with.
I think we're all on the same wavelength over here.
I'm reading my brain.
So let's just help each other through
My
this.
brain's scrambled at the moment. So we talk before.
Okay, so let's just say the whole sentence. Don't read so many words at once. I think one of the ways of overcoming the problems of being tired is to make sure you focus. By reading 3 words and no more than 3 words at a time and trying to translate them, you keep it simple and focused. So try to use that rule of thumb.
To bring them in a...
Lo yivien.
Okay, lawyer. Not to bring them in a...
One should not, right? This is a future tense. Yivien.
Right.
He should bring them. Lo yivien. He should not bring them.
In a sol or a kufa, in a box or a...
Right. So you shouldn't bring the jugs, neither in a basket nor in a box.
לתת 3 ו4 בתוך קופה. So to put 3 or 4 within the box.
Right. This is again going together what you should not do. This is what you should not do. Should not put 3 or 4 in one box.
Yistem.
Yisa'im.
Yisa'im, to lift and.
Right.
He should lift.
No.
Or he should.
No, this goes together what he shouldn't do.
He should not.
He shouldn't do all of that and then lift it up. He shouldn't put in a box 3 or 4 and lift it up.
Right.
Rashi broke it up into 2 stages. Putting it in the box and then lifting it up. All the Gemora said was don't bring them in a box. Rashi's saying, what does that mean? You'll take 3 or 4, put it in the box and then lift it up. That's really what's happening when you say don't bring it.
He should not lift, right?
Yeah, you shouldn't do this and this and lift it up.
Mishum, on account of the Re'eh, that it will be seen as if it were work of the week, or usual the daily work.
Right.
Lesa'at Mishavos.
No.
Lesa'et. To
To
carry burdens.
yes.
Lesa'ot.
It says masos.
Yeah, Lesa'et. Lesa'ot. And to carry burdens. So it seemed like carrying during the week, like carrying burdens. Okay.
So what's Rashi saying in your own words?
Don't put these 3 or 4 items in a box or a soul, and don't carry them where it is seen to be work of the week, like carrying a heavy load, carrying a load. Let's carry.
Maybe
Maybe I'll kaftor.
tough.
But maybe brings it on his shoulders, right?
Yes.
Achat or shtayim demukach. 2 or 1 or 2. Demukach is a proof. Elat zorech yontov. Then it's a proof that you're carrying for yontov.
Mm-hmm.
Or lefanav, or in front of him, yado, in other words in his hands. V'chein mimolech et ha'mataven, like mimolech carrying straw. Naasik or liva, what's it called? For animals.
Yeah.
Burning of food for animals, your yeshil kupa. Acharav. You then carry his kupa, his box behind him. The neg, it's disgusting. It's disgusting amount of grease.
What?
It's disgusting to carry straw for animals or to burn it in a box that he's carrying from behind him, because it's the Yom Tov. It's disgraceful to do it on Yom Tov. Shenera Haim. That it is seen, that his intentions,
I'm having trouble hearing you. Is it just me, or is it that you turn the volume down? Both.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I don't mind being partially to blame, as long as I'm not fully to blame. Okay, let's try that Rashi again. Ketefo.
Yes. That can be put on his shoulders.
Right.
Achat or shtayim, the mukach, the tzarich yontov. So this is proof that is used or useful for
Right.
yontov.
So that dalid means what? Dimukach.
That.
I would say because.
Because.
Why are we now going to allow this rather than the earlier case? Why is this a better scenario? Because here it's proven, anyone looking on will know for sure. It's like a proof that what?
It's necessary for yontov.
Right. So you've succeeded in making the shinui that we accept. That we accept the shinui that makes it look like Yom Tov is a special day. And you're only doing things just for Yom Tov.
Or in front of him, the yado, in his hands.
Right. Now I suggest we read it as biyadav, in his hand. It's plural, just because it makes more sense if he's holding in front of him something with his hands clasped together rather than just one hand. It's awkward to walk that way with holding something in front of you with one hand. But in any event, okay, so that was one case in the Mishnah. So just to summarize that case in the Mishnah would say, when I have a number of objects to carry, and I have a choice of whether to carry it in a way that more resembles weekday or not, what do we see already from the Mishnah? I have to choose a way that's going to be less like the Derech Chol, even though if you're not taking 4 at a time, you're only taking 2 at a time, it's going to take you extra time. But we still feel it's worth it. We're already feeling a bit of the tension. I'm allowed to do things differently. I should do things differently, but I'm also doing it in a way that's harder. So that's interesting that we don't seem to mind that. Later we'll find there is a point at which we start worrying about the extra effort. So for example, later on, when we said it can't be harder, even though I would say that's harder in a way to go make 20 trips instead of 10 trips to bring all the jugs. But apparently they don't feel, for a regular case, it's only going to be a little bit extra, not a lot extra. As you see in the Gemora, the case where it's, we don't need to make a change because of this is where you're bringing a lot. Here it's just a little bit, so maybe you're only bringing 4. So you could either bring them all in one shot or make 2 trips. So we're telling you to make 2 trips. That bit of extra effort of making a second trip isn't enough. That's not really that hard to make a second trip, apparently. But also, in conjunction with that, we're carrying a lighter load, so perhaps that's also part of the kashmir. At least I'm carrying a lighter load, and even if I have to make the same trip twice, that's okay. Okay, weiter.
V'chein hamolich et ha'tefel. So the person that carries straw, therefore.
No, you've made that mistake already numerous times.
Okay.
So whatever you have to do to erase your memory and re-etch it onto your hard disk the right way would be appreciated.
What, therefore?
No, you just said it again.
What is it?
And likewise.
Likewise.
What I would suggest is you write them both next to each other. V'chein and lachein. So you see, your eyes will see the difference, and you'll know they are different translations. Lachein with a lamed chafnun would be therefore, like you keep saying. But this is decidedly a different word. This is v'chein. So it really just boils down to the word kain, right? Which kain means yes.
Okay, and likewise, hamolich et ha'tefel, the person who carries straw,
Right.
or to burn or to offer his animals.
That's right.
Lo yifsil kupa la'acharav, is not to carry it or
Lower
lift
down.
it or lower down the box
Behind
below the la'acharav,
Behind him, right? To carry it behind him, like I guess a lot of Arabs carry loads.
They can
Ganai.
they ganai. Why? Because it's not appropriate, disgraceful, or not.
Right, it's somewhat disgracing to Yom Tov. What? Nira. Here
Was
again,
it
she
sin?
would mean because. Is why is it a disgrace? Because it's nira. It appears mitkaven,
in his intention.
like he's intending
Malacha
malacha maruba, a great deal of work.
Regular.
Right, and intending here doesn't mean like when you daven you're supposed to have kavanah. It means you've intended to do something that you're now carrying out your wishes. You're keeping a plan, basically. You planned it out, and now you're doing it.
Rabba means a lot, right?
What?
Rabba means a lot.
Use the word rabba here? Yes,
Yes.
malacha rabba, that's correct.
Drinking a little water keeps you awake, right?
It should be. If it fails, just pour it down the back of your neck and it'll work out. It's the best place.
או להולך למקום רחוק כדרכו. Or like to walk from a place which is
No, not to
far.
walk. That would be lalechet.
Laholech.
Laholich is like a hifil. To cause something to go. How do you cause something to go? You take it.
Holich means causing something to go, right?
Sorry?
Holich means causing something.
Literally, because that's what the hifil form always does. It makes that you're doing something to cause something to happen. You're not actually doing it. The best example is laha'achil. Laha'achil means to cause another person to eat. What we call feeding. I'm feeding someone. When I'm feeding somebody, I'm causing them to eat. So in Hebrew, it's called laha'achil.
So it's causing. So it's extra work.
Causing to go. Causing to go. How do you cause something to go? You take it.
Right, from the far
Just
place.
say you're taking it. Just is another way of saying take it. You're taking the thing, the tevin in this case, we're talking about tevin. Where are you taking it?
From a far place.
To a far place. Right? You're taking it away to another place. But obviously we have to use the first Rashi again. How far can this place be? It can be another town? Probably not. Because if you're traveling to another town, you're usually going...
More than 2 seconds.
Yeah, so it'd be like going outside the Eruv. Rashi already said we're not talking about that. Obviously, we're not trying to advocate for going outside the Eruv. So when you're talking about going somewhere, even now, Rashi is talking about going somewhere far away. It doesn't mean far away in the next town, outside the Tchum. That would be awesome. Rashi means far away within the town. Again. Okay?
Yeah.
So again, Rashi's trying to explain what? This Rashi explained 2 things, right?
One is the hay has been part of this for lighting.
So that's why I want to move it from one place to another. I want to move it from one place to another because the other place I need it for any of these specific reasons. Hay is an extremely useful item. I have a number of things I could be doing with it. So that's A.
B, you shouldn't lower the box behind him.
That is the halacha. That's what we're discussing. Why not?
Because no one's a knife on Yom Tov. And it's stuck doing a lot of mulacha.
That is the ganai. It looks horrible when people think you were mechav and you planned out to do malacha on Yom Tov. It looks really bad. Say, look, I thought this guy was really on a high level, but look, he piled up all these chores. He was just doing a bunch of chores on Yom Tov. So it makes you feel like Yom Tov is not special. But we have said already that we have to go to our greatest effort to make sure Yom Tov is special.
Fine, I took it this afternoon. Didn't I should take it 3:30.
You did it before you went out?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's not good because then you get tired again when you go out. So come back tired. Better if you leave early, go do whatever you have to do. Try to be back at 3:30, and then right before the shir, you put your head down and you wake up refreshed.
Okay. Alright.
All right, so let's continue. So
Rosh was on time.
Rosh did much better. Very good.
Trying to push
Again,
it
so
down.
Rashi's trying to say, A, why would I want to bring the tevin from a far place, and B, what's wrong with it? What's wrong with doing it in the behind you, etc. Rashi says it can't look like you're just doing a lot of work on Yom Tov, because if someone sees you just doing a lot of work on Yom Tov, they'll think you planned it, and that ruins people's impression about Yom Tov being such a special day, right? Which you know that half the thing we've spoken about in the last few weeks in the Masechta is about keeping Yom Tov special. So that's what we call a cardinal sin. Cardinal sin, making it look like it's just another day. It's just a day for doing chores. And Rashi says another thing it's going to look like, even if it doesn't look like you were trying to pile up chores, but it might look like you're bringing it far away. Now, does Rashi mean far away within the Tchum or far away outside the Tchum?
Well, we still in the Tchum.
So I'm not actually sure now, because he's explaining why we don't want you to bring it in a way that looks bad. And one of the things he's saying now, because it might look like you're taking it far away. Now, if it's within the same town, who cares? That's mutter. But if it looks like you're going somewhere else outside the Tchum, maybe that's what we're worried about. It's going to look really bad. It looks like you're heading outside the Tchum. People are going to think, if I saw this person as a kosher Jew going outside the Tchum, I said, I'm going outside the Tchum. You ask someone, did you really see him step outside the Tchum? He said, no, but I saw him carrying something. It was clear he's going a very long distance. So again, it's a Moris Ayin on something that's really wrong. But if you're just going somewhere within the Tchum, so who cares? It looks like you're going far. Is that a bad thing to look like you're going far?
No.
Looks like you're going from Achuzat Yarim all the way up to Nachalas Tzvi.
That's,
Is that a bad thing? Carrying something way to the top of the hill for Yom Tov. Fine, great. But it's tzaddik. So Rosh is saying, no, that's not the pshat. It looks like you're going to a makam rachok, the other kind of makam that's actually outside the tikkun. Walking to Abu Ghosh. So that's what Rashi says. Either it looks like you're just doing a lot of work, and if you're doing a lot of work, you probably intended to do it on Yom Tov, and it's kind of like saying, I don't care about Yom Tov. I'm just going to intend and plan all my work out for Yom Tov. Or it looks like he's actually going far away, which could mean outside the Erev, which is also sending a bad message to people who see you doing it. Okay, either way, Rashi has done his job. He's explained why I would want Tevin. Why is that such a Yom Tov thing? Wine, I understand. Wine is celebrating. Wine is a very Yom Tov dika thing. I should want to carry wine from one place to another to celebrate. But Tevin? What do I need Tevin in another place? So Rashi says, first of all, I need it to cook, because part of heating up things on the fires is having proper kindling. The other thing Rashi says, which is maybe more of a kiddush, but of course, as firm Jews we know, we have to be careful with the needs of our animals. That's called a Yom Tov need. I can't eat before my animals eat, right? If you made a motzi and you suddenly realize you haven't fed your animals, you have to run out to feed them right before you even eat your own bread. Because it's so important to make sure your animals eat. So that's called a Yom Tov need. If I can't eat without my animals eating, then I have to make sure my animals eat, even on Yom Tov, right? So that's called the Yom Tov need. So Rashi first tells you, why would I need this on Yom Tov? Why do I need Tevin in another place? Why do I have to carry so much Tevin? Because A, I might need it for cooking or heating, and B, I might need it for feeding my animal. Very big need. So then let me do it in the way that makes it easier to carry one trip with a whole bunch on my back. No. Because then it looks like you planned to do this on Yom Tov. You planned out a day to do your chores, to empty out your barn of all the hay or something, or transfer all the hay to a particular barn. You knew that on Yom Tov you have extra time, so you planned it out. That's a Hillel Yom Tov. That's called Hillel Yom Tov. It makes it look Yom Tov look like it's not even an important day. You just do all your chores. Or it looks like you're going far away, which we're saying means outside the Tikkun. So Rashi did his entire job here, right? He not only gave a reason why I need it, and why the way that the Mishnah says is wrong. So Rashi did his job. Why would I need it? And why is this way wrong? But he also did a double whammy. He gave me 2 reasons why I would need it, and 2 reasons why it's wrong. How much should Rashi get paid for doing that? Overtime. Rashi could have done a simple thing over here. Rashi could have just said 1 reason why I need it, and 1 reason why it looks wrong. What did Rashi say? 2 reasons why I would need it, and 2 reasons why it's wrong to carry it in the way on the back. Why did Rashi exert so much effort to give so many reasons? Couldn't he just get away with 1 reason why you need it and 1 reason why it's wrong?
That was in all the mitzvah over here.
What would you say, Shabbatai?
Not thinking we make all 1, but the other one doesn't apply.
Maybe Rashi feels 1 reason isn't enough. If it was only 1 need.
I think here you be macher, but other case should be makel, vice versa.
Maybe.
I mean, he's talking about different things as well. He's talking about objects in a box.
No, not that one. This one. Talking about taking hay, carrying it behind you.
Yeah. Well,
that's what we're talking about right now.
So he's talking about ochel nefesh, and he's talking about feeding animals, which is necessary for Yom Tov.
I understand.
That's one reason.
Rashi could have just said, "I need it for cooking. I need it for creating a fire." Often, hay is needed for creating a fire, right?
You know?
So that would have been enough if Rashi just gave me 1 reason why I need it. Seems like that's not enough. You have to have 2 reasons why you need it. Either you personally need 2 reasons, or just it makes more sense that people generally need these hay for 2 separate reasons. So Rashi wants to mention both to show how chashuv hay was in their day. Why we'd make such a big deal out of how you carry your hay. And the second thing he told me, two separate problems. It makes it look like you tried to do malacha on Yom Tov, but also makes it look like you're going far away. Either one of those reasons wouldn't be enough. We have to have it looking bad for two different reasons to say why it would be asur. Because ostensibly you find it easier. Maybe because we're talking about when you put it behind you, you find it easier than to carry it in front of you. To carry it biyado is harder, right? To swing it behind you is in this case easier. So it's not just making a change from the weekday. Because what's our rule? We can't tell you to change something from the weekday if it's going to be harder. So if the normal way of carrying it is behind you, to make it easier, instead of in your hands, carrying it in your hands, then we should have let you do it. We should have let you carry it behind you. Why? Because carrying it in your hands is harder. No, I'm talking about one simple thing now.
It's a lot of work.
No, but I'm asking you a simple thing. We're telling you don't carry it behind you, carry it in front of you. Is that because we want to do it a different way than the week? That was the first thing. That was the thing that there's Kade Yayin and all of that was because of that, right? Rashi said, if I carry it in a box, it looks like it's a Maisa Chol. Right? So the first halakha in this Mishnah was what? Don't carry your wine in the normal way. Meaning, you're going to carry only 2 at a time instead of 4 at a time.
In front of you.
Okay? And we said that's a chiddush because it's a change from the Maisa Chol, which we know we're trying to change from the Maisa Chol, but it's also a little bit harder to carry it in your hands instead of in a box. And you have to make 2 trips now instead of 1. But I guess the Gemora's chiddush is it's not that much harder. It's not so much harder that you call it harder. Okay? But this second halacha about the hay, carrying the hay in front of you in your hands and not on you, behind you, that Rashi doesn't say is because you're trying to avoid the way you do it during Chol. You know why Rashi doesn't say that?
Because it's not so heavy, right?
Because what's the easier way of carrying a bundle of hay?
On your back.
On your back. So if the reason here was to change from the way you do it during Chol, and that's why he's saying don't do it in back, do it in your arms, that wouldn't fit with the Gemora later. The Gemora later says the objective of changing from Chol is never at the expense of the tircha. If it's harder to do, we won't have you do it. We're not going to have you do a different than Chol that's harder. So why am I not allowed to carry it on my back? It's easier. What does Rashi say?
It appears to be
Done without a blip.
That's not what Rashi says. What does Rashi say?
Your intention.
It's going to look bad. It's a Maris Ayin of a whole different type now. A whole different thing now. It's a whole different board. It looks like you intended to do your malacha on Yom Tov. So it's a disgrace for Yom Tov. So we're forcing you to change, not because we just want you to do it differently than the Chol.
Worried about Maris Ayin.
We're worried about a special Maris Ayin now, which could, if people end up believing that you were actually intending to do all this malacha on Yom Tov, it's a disgrace. So that's like slapping Yom Tov in the face. So how did Rashi know that it's not for the other reason? The traditional reason, like the first halacha in the Mishnah. Especially it said v'chein. The Mishnah said v'chein, which means what, Shabbatai?
Wait.
Uh-huh.
Likewise.
Very good. Which means it should be a similar halacha.
Yeah.
But all the likewise means, according to Rashi, is do it differently than you were intending to do it. Okay? But the reason is completely different. The first one, I tell you, don't carry it in a box, carry it on your shoulder or your hands. Why? To change it from the weekday. But the second one, we say, don't carry it behind you, carry it in your arms. Rashi doesn't say it's because I'm changing it from the way I do it during the week.
It's for a different reason.
Why? How does Rashi know? Because the Gemora says, when do you change from the way you did it during the week?
If it's easy.
If it's easier or at least neutral.
But if it's something harder.
But if it's harder, the way we're telling you to do it, then we're not allowed, just because we want to do it differently than Chol. So here, the Mishnah is telling you to do what? Don't carry it behind you, carry it in your arms. We're telling you to do something that's easier or neutral or harder.
It's harder.
Harder. It's harder to carry a bundle of hay like this than to carry it on the back like those Arabs who are moving refrigerators. Right?
Mm-hmm.
So how can we tell you to do something that's harder? How in the world we're not allowed to do that, the Gemora says. Right? Just if the only objective is to change it from Chol, what does Rashi answer? Two answers. Rashi has two answers. Because here it's much worse. Because if you do it behind your back, right now you know where they got the expression, doing something behind your back.
It appears ugly on Rosh.
It'll look like you're slapping Yom Tov in the face.
Okay, I mean, I can tend to do a lot of work.
Right, which is like slapping Yom Tov in the face. So it's worse than just doing the Ma'aseh Chol. You're actually positively slapping Yom Tov in the face. You're doing something to make it really look bad. Or it makes it look like you're going outside the Techum, which is a different kind of Marasayin. Right? That's another kind of a real Avera. It looks like you're really heading towards to do an Avera. So we came along and we said, what? Don't carry it behind you, because if you carry it behind, it's going to look so bad. Like you did really big Averas over. You intended to do it on Malacha, a lot of Malacha on Yom Tov, or
Looks like you're going to
looks like you're going outside the Techum. So that's why Rashi has to explain those, because Rashi wants to make sure to tell you how bad this is. Maybe one of these isn't enough to be considered enough of a reason to tell you to do a harder job on Yom Tov. Okay?
So he wants to emphasize how bad it is actually.
What?
He's trying to emphasize how bad it is when carrying hay behind your back, because I could tell him to do a malacha and also going outside the Chum.
That's right. A big bad Marasayin. Two different kinds of Marasayin that are really bad. And that explains why we had you do something that's harder, when normally, according to the first halach of the Mishnah, you would never ask someone to do something that's harder. You see, in the Gemora, that's out. Just to tell someone to do it differently than Chol, we can only ask you if it's easier or neutral, but not if it's harder. So very interesting. Rashi, that's why Rashi was working so hard. You get it?
Yep.
Now you can pour the water down your back.
A little bit. There you are.
Alright, if it works, it works. Not, we'll have to pour more water. Okay.
How's that work?
Let's continue then. So,
Can I get sick if I take too much?
and if you get cold later, but you'll have a coat on, hopefully it won't be bad. Plus, hopefully it'll dry out. And if you learn better, then hopefully Shem will give you more Siyata Shmaya too. Okay, so far we learned two halachas in this mission. Now we understand they're unique halachas. Each one is sending a completely different message in its own way. The first one is the idea of changing from Chol, which dovetails with the previous parak that we had, where we were constantly trying to do that. And also, we're going to see in the Gemora a few more details about that. The limitations on when we do it and when we don't do it. The second halach, however, Rashi says is a whole new ballgame. Even though it says v'chein, and you could have said it's very similar, but the truth is it's not. It's a different halach. It's only similar in one respect. Don't do it in the way you would have normally wanted to do it. But here we have to come up with a new reason. Because if it would be the old reason, it wouldn't fit with the Gemora. It says we're never allowed to ask you to do that unless it's easier.
Yep.
Brilliant Rashi.
Yep.
See all that he put into it. A few lines, he covered a lot of ground there.
It's a lot to carry.
Yeah. Okay, so now we have a new halacha, third halacha of the Mishnah, which is the last word on the previous page, maschilin. Aremat
So to begin,
Hateven.
you want to read? To start a pile of straw.
Matchilan is a plural verb.
They begin.
We do this. This is what we do.
We pile up hay.
We are allowed, in other words, to start
Pile up hay.
to pile up
Hay.
a huge pile of hay.
To pile up a huge pile of hay.
Right. So maybe later we'll talk about the tircha element or whatever, but right now, Rashi in this Mishnah is going to talk about the halachas of muksa and look at it from that perspective, right? But there's probably a few issues that are going on over here. Because Rashi, when he says muksa, he also tells us the Gemora is thinking it's a problem of muksa, but really the truth is it's not going to necessarily be that issue.
How do you say ba'armat?
Arema.
The
The real word is an arema, which, by the way, is a modern Hebrew word, a pile of something. But here, like many words that end with the feminine ending, arema, and you want to say the arema of something, you just put a tav there. Aremat hateven. Yeah. Okay, so the first halacha is what? How would you say it in your own words, Sruli?
We're allowed to pile up a huge pile of hay.
Exactly. But it says to begin,
We're allowed to
which is
begin.
interesting.
It's not the diavad. It's not the diavad.
It's not b'diavad, it's the chatchila. And it's also saying something about, apparently, if I would have had already a pile piled up, it would have been less of a chiddush. When it tells me I'm even allowed to start, that to me is a bigger chiddush. Even starting from scratch. I'm going to start, so it's extra work, first of all, if you have to start from scratch. Second of all, as far as Hilchos Muksa, it's a bigger chiddush because I haven't done it yet. So maybe I didn't even think about doing it before Yom Tov. So as far as Muksa is concerned, it's more of a reason to say it should be Muksa.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a much bigger chiddush when he puts in the word matchilim, even though it could just be like Sruli said, we're allowed to pile it up. That's really what it's saying. But it's saying one step more. We're even allowed to begin to pile it up. Which is apparently a bigger chiddush than just saying we're allowed to pile it up. Because pile up could mean I already have a bit of a pile and I'm going to add to the pile. So that's less of a chiddush that I'm allowed to do that than if I had to start from scratch. Is a bigger chiddush, right?
Yes.
So what does Rashi say in the Gemora really? The Mishnah says what? Not only are we allowed to make a pile, we're allowed to what? Matchilim.
We're allowed to begin.
We can even begin the pile. It's a bigger chiddush. Whether we're talking about effort, tircha, or we're talking about muksa. In either department, beginning the pile is a bigger chiddush than just continuing a pile. Yeah?
Yes.
That's what I think that word is doing there. Okay, now, aval.
Loi be'etzim shibamotza. No, with twigs that are from the
Okay, any kind of pieces of wood that were what? In the muktzah.
in the muktzah.
Now, muktzah here means what? Not what we normally mean with saying muktzah. Oh, that's muktzah.
Backyard.
Here it's an area,
In the area.
right? Like off to the edges. They said muktzah is from the word kates, like parshas mi kates, right? The edge. At the end of 7 years, or at the end of whatever, right? And also when Paro woke up, what did it say when Paro woke up from his dream? Vayikatz Paro. He woke up. Because that's the end. He reached the end of his dream. So muksa is really a place that's off on the edges, out at the edges, right? What do they call a person who's an extremist in modern Hebrew?
Kitzonim.
Kitzoni, right? Again, off to the extremes, off to the edges of the fringe, right? The fringe element, the fringe area. So muksa is like the fringe, like pushed off to the side, way out on the outside. So what area is that? Rashi says, the backyard, right? Because the front yard's a little bit more in the center of things, right? It's right in front of your house, and it's also next to the Rishus Rabim or whatever. But if the backyard is so far away removed from everything, people don't walk there normally, and a lot of people don't even go there. It's way out on the fringes. So they call the area muktzah.
Yep.
Okay? So that's apparently part of the Chiddush. Even there, you can't do it. But what can't you do? What can't you do?
אבל לא בעצם.
So what can't you do?
Pile up wood.
Can't pile up pieces of wood. Okay?
Yeah.
And why does it say be'etzim?
In the area where it's lived.
No, be'etzim. Be'etzim.
But
Because that's paralleling be'aremas hateven.
to begin.
We talked about, no, that's matchilim. Matchilim is begin.
You're allowed to.
So when we said you're allowed, what do we say? You're allowed to be involved in piling up this thing.
But
The-
not
the-
allowed to be involved in
But you're not allowed to be involved in piling up the eitzim. And, right, probably goes together with you're not allowed to begin. But probably you're not allowed to do any piling up. But in any event, okay, so there's some kind of a thing. I'm allowed to take straw and pile it up, but I'm not allowed to take pieces of wood and pile them up. What should be the difference? Right? They're both fuel, they're both, right? The only thing difference maybe is tevin, we know,
Yeah, you can
Could
use
be-
the animals.
used for animals.
Which you
So
can-
maybe that makes it more useful than wood, which only has one usage of burning. I don't know. But I'm just clutching at straws here.
Got it.
I know how tired you guys are. Didn't laugh at my joke.
Nah. Got it. It just wasn't very funny.
Yeah, but it was a tired laugh.
So,
All right. Let's see Rashi.
how does daydreaming make one tired?
Maybe because you're still using your mind. So it's like you feel like, say, you daydream about going to the top of a mountain. You feel like you just climbed a whole mountain. Tiring to climb a mountain. You know what they say? For a lot of people, when they finish the Shemona Esrei, they should say Tefilas Haderech.
Yeah, you get frequent fly spins.
How many 5.2?
All right, let's try to do some flying through this Rashi.
You want to read it?
Please.
Sure.
Maschilim b'arimas hatem. Maschilim is l'chachila allowed to pile up a huge pile of hay. Means lahasik, to burn, for combustion. Al-Papi shelo zimana.
Zimna.
Shelo zimna be'erev yom tov.
Ba'ojo.
Ba'ojo, even though it wasn't prepared when it was still...
He didn't prepare.
You didn't prepare when it was still... That means erev yom tov.
Right.
Loi haya raga lahasuk mimena. It wasn't kind of accustomed to learn from it.
Burn.
Burn from it.
Right. He's not accustomed to using straw for burning his normal fire.
Hashta, now, Mashma to Leisle Mukta. Now, in Prazi, he doesn't hold a Mukta.
Who's he?
Rabbi Shimon.
No.
At the time.
Whoever wrote this Mishnah. Whoever said I'm allowed to pile up straw, it looks like he's the person who doesn't hold a muksa. Because how could he let me pile up straw? Shouldn't straw be muksa?
Yes.
What is straw? It's just another piece of wood, really. But you're letting me pile it up. You're letting me move it. It must not be muksa. But why shouldn't it be muksa? It should be muksa, right? Because Rashi said two reasons why it should be muksa. Do you remember?
Yeah.
First of all, lo zimna b'ba'ajom.
He didn't prepare it.
Didn't prepare it. So normally, if you want some piece of wood to be non-muksa, you should prepare it. You should say, oh, I'm going to use this. When do we have that? Remember when we had that earlier?
In the third parak?
What's the question?
First Mishnah in the Masechta.
What's the question?
When do we find that if you take something that would normally be muksa, but if you prepare it beforehand, you can make it non-muksa?
Beitsa.
Oh, Shimon.
No, even earlier than that.
Beitsa.
No, in that Mishnah about Beitsa, very good that you remember the first Mishnah.
The oil of the candles.
No. That's where they talk about if there's leftover,
Yeah.
can you use it or not? But that's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about something that definitely should have been muksa,
Yeah.
but because you prepared it beforehand, it's not muksa. You were smarter. You knew tomorrow you're going to need a certain thing that's normally considered muksa. So you came up to it on Erev Yom Tov and you said, I'm going to use this tomorrow, and by doing that, it's like you waved a magic wand and now it's not going to be muksa.
You're trapping the deer. When the deer is within the fence.
That was a case. But the first mission, the Masechta. Try to think of the first mission, the Masechta. What did we say over there? 3 halachas in the first mission. You keep saying that. That's the first halacha. Second halacha. You guys should be reviewing it constantly. What are you talking about?
Beitsa was born on Yom Tov, late on Yom Tov, right?
Okay.
Shema says it could be eaten. Beitsa says it could not be eaten.
That's halacha 1. Halacha 2.
It had a sore kazayis.
Or which is a type of chametz. Machlokas Beishai Hillel. If it's asur b'kazayis or b'kikosevis.
Yeah.
Third halacha.
Shoichet chayav oif. The Shema says you should dig up.
He's allowed to
dig up and cover it.
The shovel with the sand, if you're going to.
But Hillel says you're not allowed to shecht it, only if you had dirt prepared from before.
Dirt what?
It was already prepared.
Prepared?
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
Mukhan. Avoid yelling.
Wow, you can take dirt and prepare it from before that? If you didn't prepare it, dirt is muksa. But if you prepare it, not muksa. Does that sound like what we're looking for?
Yeah.
And the last words of the Mishnah, which are cryptic words that the Gemora has to struggle to explain. No, the last 3 words of the Mishnah. Modim she'im she'efer kira.
She'im efer modim
Muchan. Same thing with afer, right? Afer ashes should be muksa, right? They don't have any real purpose, but if you prepare them, they could be used for covering the blood, etc. Okay, so do we have a precedent for what Rashi's implying?
Yes.
Something that should be muksa. You could have dealt with it Erev Yom Tov by having thought about it in advance. And what would you do if you thought about it in advance?
Prepared it.
Would have prepared it. Prepare meaning what? Be mezaminit. Mezaminit means you give it a purpose. You designate it. Right? Just like a hazmanah. What's a hazmanah today in modern Hebrew?
Preparation.
Huh?
A preparation?
No, a hazmanah.
Right.
An invitation. Did you get a hazmanah to the chasana? Lo kibalti hazmanah. I didn't get an invitation to the chasana. Hazmanah is an invitation. Hazmin, to invite. Can mean to prepare, can mean to invite. Think of it when you invite someone, what you're really doing is you're designating them as someone you want to be at your Suda. It's like designate. It's a form of designation. Okay? If you want to think of it even more, perhaps that's why we call time Zman. Because then the highest form of designation is you tell them, come at 8 o'clock. Right? And in modern parlance, that means 9 o'clock. But theoretically, you're telling them not only come, designating them to come, designating which time to come. That's really a specific designation. So Rashi says you could have taken this straw, if you think straw is a muksa, but you could have demuksaized it by what? Preparing it the day before. How do you prepare it the day before? You designate it. Meaning you don't necessarily have to pick it up. You just make a declaration. I want to use this straw tomorrow. Or maybe you could just say it from inside your house. You know the straw behind your house, strewn about in the yard. I want to use that straw tomorrow for the fire or whatever. Okay?
So this is the reason why this Tana doesn't hold a muktzah, because he's beginning something. It wasn't prepared from the day before.
Rashi's Medayik, that's true. That could be part of the maskilin. Good, I like that. Maskilin implies you starting, meaning I didn't do it yesterday. Good, very good. That would lead in very nicely why he had to say maskilin for the chiddush that Rashi's explaining, because then you're emphasizing, even if I didn't do anything yesterday, just today's the beginning. Right? So that's how Rashi knew that he hadn't prepared it. Very good, Shabbatai. Very good. You redeemed yourself.
That's what it took.
Yeah, everything goes back to the first mission.
That's right. It all comes back. So, Rashi said, but this case we know he didn't, and now we have from Shabbatai the diuk of Rashi, because it said maschilin. That means you're starting now on Yom Tov. You didn't do anything yesterday. That's how Rashi knew that he didn't do any preparation yesterday. So how come I can use straw if I didn't prepare it yesterday? Shouldn't it be as bad as the dirt that if I didn't prepare it yesterday, I can't use it? It says I have to prepare it.
So at this point,
So Rashi says that's one chiddush that you hadn't prepared it, but also another thing Rashi says: V'lo haya ragil lahasik mimena. He wasn't what?
Accustomed
To,
light from it.
meaning,
To use it as
if let's say every other day he's using the straw to cook his fire, to burn his fire, to cook his food, then does he have to prepare it? Rashi's saying there's a possibility that you don't have to prepare something to designate it beforehand if you always use it anyways. Something you always use. So then you don't need to prepare it. Why not? Because if you always use it,
it's not
then in your back of your mind is certainly like an automatic hasmana. Right? You ask someone, are you going to use the straw tomorrow? He's like, of course I am. That's what I always use. So then he doesn't need a positive preparation. He doesn't need a proper designation. Because it's what he does anyways. Right? It's like if you come home every night and you wash for bread. Your wife knows every day you wash for bread. There's not a day you came home and didn't wash for bread. So you know what she's going to put out for you? Bread. Right? A good wife will put out for bread, unless, of course, you didn't take out the garbage, and it's a different story. Right? But why would she know to do that? Because she's basing herself on the normal day-to-day activity. If the normal day-to-day activity is, then it's expected. Anything that's expected, that you count on it. Right? So if he's always using this straw for lighting his fire, then he doesn't have to designate it because it's already expected that he's going to use it. It's much better than having to designate it. Right? Mm-hmm. So Rashi says that the chiddush here is that even though he didn't prepare it, and even though he's also not what? Accustomed to using it. So both reasons to say this shouldn't be muksa don't exist. And still it says you can do it. That's the chiddush of this Mishnah. That the Tanam obviously what? Doesn't hold a muksa. It must be Rabbi Shimon. Right? Yep. The problem is the next halacha. Then it says avalo be'etzim sheb'muksa. You can't pile up the pieces of wood that are in the backyard.
Rechova means
a wide area.
Wide area. Acharei habatim.
It's in back of the houses, backyard.
Muktzah.
Yeah, that's a nickname. Muktzah.
Hashem shu muktzah.
It's interesting. It's called muktzah because it's muktzah. But that's so that you have to realize the word muktzah means pushed away. Right? Pushed away off to the edge. So Rosh says, yeah, that's what it is. It's pushed away off where? La'achor. Behind. Nichnasim tadir. Rashi's saying it's not like a backyard that you always use. Okay? You don't go in and come out of there always. Not like a regular backyard even. It's a place that's a little bit abandoned, a little bit unused, Rashi says. Okay, you have to figure out why Rashi had to add that. Keep going.
Ain't that a little as Mamaruva? Anything where it's not your man, to have place your that's on the Mamaruva for a lot of time.
What does that mean?
Means a lot of time passed by and he didn't.
Okay, let's read the whole sentence. V'sham nosnim. And there we put
wood.
Pieces of wood.
Wood.
V'chol davar, and any other thing.
Any other thing that ain't that little as Mamaruva.
Which what?
Anything that you didn't put your mind for a long time on it.
that you don't intend, in other words, to use for a long time. Right? What would we call this today? A storage area. I'm putting back there stuff that I won't need for a few months. Okay? So that's, Rashi just made it that what? The stuff back there is stuff that I normally do use or I normally don't use. Don't use. How does Rashi know that? Because he said that's why it's called muksa. Muksa means it's like pushed off to the side. Pushed out of the way. So it's not exactly like our backyard. Probably most people in their backyard, they do go in and out of there a lot. But probably some people have at least a part of the backyard that nobody really goes into that place, like a shed maybe, like a certain abandoned shed. No, people only keep back there things that they won't need for a long time. Or like the attic today, people in their attic would be the same thing. They put up there things they don't think they're going to need for a long time. So what does Rashi gain by that? That should be the same problem as we just said with the straw. What's the problem with the straw? You didn't prepare it the day before, and you don't normally use it. So it should have been considered muksa. If it's not muksa, it must be that the Tana doesn't hold a muksa. Here we have the same kind of a thing. The wood back there, is it wood that you normally use? No. How does Rashi know? Because it's in an area that normally people don't go in and out of there. They just keep stuff back there for long periods of time when they don't need them. So again, the wood that's back there, you can't say he normally uses it and that would be a reason why it's not muksa. It's probably muksa, because it's something you don't use, right? And therefore, it makes sense that this Tana is saying you can't use it. You can't pile it up, which means you can't use it. But that's going to end up being a stira between that and the case of the straw. The straw said you could pile up, even though you don't use it. And this they're saying you can't pile up, even though, again, you don't use it. So why is that? Why are we saying two opposite halachas in the same sentence? So Rashi ends up, what? Ubi Gemora.
Parach Sefer Rosh.
The Gemora will what?
Also the Sefer to the
Ask the kasha that the Sefer contradicts the Reisha. Why? Now, at this point, when we're reading this part of the Mishnah, it's mashma that this Tana, whoever wrote this Mishnah, does hold a muksa. So that's very strange. You have two parts of the same sentence. This you can do, this you can't do. And the person who said this you could do is one Tana, and he said the next sentence you can't do is another Tana already. That can't be. Something not quite fitting in here. Okay?
So he's saying that they're two...
It would seem like there's two Tanoim, because they're saying two opposite things, and normally the same Tana would be consistent in his views. Even though we said at the beginning of the Masechta, you could say on Shabbos maybe you hold a muksa and on Yom Tov you don't, or vice versa. It's possible to say that there's times when we hold a muksa and times we don't. But normally, if you don't hold a muksa, you don't hold a muksa. If you hold a muksa, you hold a muksa. If we take it into an area that we already know, Maklokas Rabbi Shimon and Rabbi Yehuda, Mosar Shem and Shebener, which you were referring to before, then
Shabbos wood would be muksa.
That's true. That's true. But that's not the point. The point is here, even though you're allowed to use wood for burning fire, but you don't normally use this wood. That's what Rashi just made this whole long explanation about it being in the backyard, and you don't normally go in there, and you just keep stuff back there that you normally don't use for long periods of time. So Rashi made it sound like, since you don't normally use it, it should be muksa. It's a piece of wood you don't normally use, so that should be like a rock in the street that has no usage. So maybe the Gemora will go into that and say, no, we didn't understand it correctly. There's a reason why straw and wood are different, or whatever. But right now we're saying, look, on the surface, they both should be treated the same. If you're allowing people to use the straw, despite the fact that he didn't prepare it, despite the fact that he doesn't normally use it, then you should let him do the wood as well. There's no reason why one should be mutter and the other should be asur. Unless the one is written by someone who holds a muktzah, the other is written by someone who doesn't hold a muktzah. But that would be strange within the same sentence, unless there's something we're missing. Like sometimes the Gemara will do that. It'll supply a missing link, a missing piece of the puzzle that was left out of the Mishnah intentionally. call that chisurim extra, maybe something missing. The Rashi just setting us up for that, saying there's definitely something wrong the way the Mishnah appears to us, or the way we're understanding it at superficial level. So hopefully the Gemora will come along and grapple with that and come up with an answer where they're not contradictory, or there's a piece of the puzzle that's missing, and it will supply the piece of the puzzle, hopefully. Either way, we're going to have to deal with this Mishnah that, in terms of Hilchos Muksa, seems to be contradictory.
So this Sefer and Rosh, this is going to be explained later.
Yeah.
It's nothing we've read so far.
No, Rashi says the Gemora will ask. Gemora will ask means later on in the Gemora will ask.
Okay, very good.
Okay, should we start the Gemora?
Yep.
How much time do we have? Yes. Time waits for no man.
Alright, well, we have a few minutes. Let's start the Gemora.
Tanaim I Ifshar Leshanot Mutar. So in a Mishnah,
No, not
Or-
necessarily.
or the Tanya, the rabbis taught.
Right, it's like
Somewhere.
saying Tana Rabbanan.
Okay.
It was taught in a Beitsa.
If it's not possible to change, then it's okay. It's mutar.
Right, so we'll put in the context of the Mishnah. Let's assume it's talking about the Mishnah. First halakha in the Mishnah was what? If you normally carry jugs in a box or a thing because you carry 3 or 4 at a time, we're telling you to not do that on Yom Tov. We're telling you to change your style on Yom Tov and carry only 1 or 2 at a time. Your shoulder and your hands, whatever. But that's the main message of this Mishnah, the first halakha of the Mishnah with jugs of wine. So the set comes along the Gemora and says, but that's all well and good if, in order to do that, you don't have to, right? It's possible to change it without a great deal of effort. But if by changing you end up having to do something that which we call impossible, which is going to turn out to be it's too hard, then we don't require you to do it. Then you can go back to carrying it in the box.
Okay.
Let's see the Rashi example of that. What would be called it's impossible to change and we're allowed to do it the normal way.
Yes, it's possible to change. כגון שזימן אורחים הרבה.
Good. This time you pronounced it correctly.
Ordered a lot of guests.
Right. In other words, invited.
Invited a lot of guests.
Right.
צורך להביא הרבה יחד. Need to bring many
Jugs of wine
one time.
together.
Together.
Yachad. Together as opposed to breaking them up. What did the Mishnah say? Don't take 4 at a time, take 2 at a time, basically. Make 2 trips of 2 at a time, better than taking 4 at a time. Because to take 4 at a time, you're going to have to put it in a box. It's going to look bad. Right? But it's saying, if you have to bring a lot together is the important part. That in order to break it up, what do I have to do? Make more trips. If I'm carrying so much wine that to break it up into small trips is going to be like an all-day affair. That's too hard. That's too impossible. Therefore,
צורך להביא mutter.
then it's mutter to do what?
To bring four.
To
Bring four.
bring all of them together in a box. Right? If that's the way that you have to do it, then you have to do it. Right? When will that be? When you have a lot. Much more than 4. So then to split it up would be such a harsh task, either in terms of effort, making many trips, or in terms of time, taking up the entire afternoon or whatever. So having to do it that way is like torture, basically. Right? It's like if you have to bring silverware to the table. Much easier to bring 10 forks and 10 knives. And your wife says, no, I don't want you to do that. I want you to bring all the forks first, and then come back and get all the knives. You're like, oh, come on. Please. Right? So we have to make even 2 trips sometimes. Just too much extra work. It's like torture. So here we're talking about making 1 trip versus 2. There the Mishnah says what?
Is mutter. No wait, the Mishnah says it's
The Mishnah said what?
also.
If it's a matter of making 1 trip versus 2, what do you have to do?
Make 1.
What do the Mishnah say?
You have to bring only 2 bottles.
Now, how many do you really want to bring?
4.
So if you're going to make one trip with 4, and if I tell you have to take 2 at a time, what am I really telling you?
Take 4.
Take 2 trips.
You have to make 2 trips. So if it's a matter of making 1 trip versus 2, what is the Mishnah telling me?
Like 2.
2. I have to make 2 trips. Right? Take the forks, come back, get the knives. I have to do that. Sometimes I have to do that. Because it's not such a great effort. That's not such a big difference. Okay? I can do it. So therefore I can make the shinui from a normal way of doing it. Even though I'm going to make 2 trips, it's a little bit harder. But it's not so much harder. Right? So that's called negligible. Right? There's such a thing called negligible. Right? Like sometimes there's radiation, like when you take an x-ray. Do you know when you take an x-ray you're exposed to radiation? It's negligible. It's such a minor amount they don't feel it's... Right? So it's a bit of an extra effort to make 2 trips versus 1, but that's negligible. Plus, when I'm taking 2 trips, I'm taking only 2 at a time. That's much easier. Right? So that they require me to do. But if I have to make 10 trips versus 5, or 20 trips versus 10, then the Mishnah and the Gemora is saying what? The Beitsa is adding on information here and saying what? That's called, according to Rashi, Efshar L'Shados. Then it's called I cannot do it. I can't do it. Oh, you can make 10 trips. What do you mean you can't do it? What do you do? Stop crying. Just make 10 trips. No. That's called I can't do it. Because there's too much extra tircha, and we know that's going to be forbidden. Extra tircha is too much, plus the extra time, and all of that. And there's Yom Tov is ticking away, so, again, this is the beauty of Chazal. They're like scientists. They know exactly how much, and not more. 2 trips versus 1, you have to do...
So you have to do 1.
2 trips.
2 trips. Because of the nerve.
I hope you answer correctly on Sunday when I ask you again.
So you have to do 2 trips.
But if you have to take 10 trips versus 5,
Take 5.
then it's called impossible. I can't do that. Right? So it's right sometimes when the child says to the mother, I can't do that. Well, you know, it just means more effort. It's saying over here, that's sometimes called EFSHAR, especially when there's a mitzvah of Simchus Yom Tov and a mitzvah of Sudas Yom Tov, and you can't start to do too much. It'll interfere with Simchus Yom Tov. Okay.